Turron Davenport joining the show today to tell us what he thinks of the 2025 quarterback class. Been bringing on a lot of people from Nashville media, getting other people's opinions here so we can get the full spectrum of what to expect this offseason. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Jaxson Graver. With me, as always, Justin, Melo, and Justin. We got a great show today. Turron Davenport of ESPN coming on to give us his thoughts on the 2025 quarterback class. After we've talked a lot about Cam Ward, we've talked very little about Shedeur Sanders. We're going to talk about both guys today and maybe one other with Turron Davenport. How's it going?
Doing well, man. Yeah, really excited to have TD on. Valuable insight into all three quarterbacks that we wanted to discuss today. He's been watching all of them in-depthly, been posting clips on his Twitter about them. Really, really good stuff from TD and helps give us a bit more clarity on this quarterback class and the decision or the dilemma the Titans are facing at number one overall.
Right. TD, hardworking dude, great guy covering the Titans, and he watches the film. So his thoughts are informed. And I can't wait to get him on the show in a little bit. But first, Justin, we got to hit I'll Drink to That, presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. And Justin, what we're drinking to today, look, there's not a lot of news going on. I'm not going to lie to the audience. We're kind of reaching for things to drink to a little bit these last few episodes. But there is something we can drink to today. And that is the report that the Browns and the Giants are going to be meeting with Shedeur Sanders, which... You know, there's a lot of reports out there that the Browns and the Giants both want a quarterback. The more teams who want a quarterback, the better chance you have of selling that number one pick for a higher return, which whether or not you want the Titans to draft Cam Ward at number one like me, or you want the Titans to trade back for a haul like you, regardless of what you want the Titans to do, the more teams interested in the quarterback class, the better, whether that means the Titans are right to want a quarterback at one, or whether it means you can drive the price up for that number one pick. It's just a good thing the more teams that are out there that love these quarterbacks.
Yeah, good news for the Titans. I mean, it's a no-brainer, but I will say it's a little early for top 30 visits. We're like almost a month out from the combine, and yet here we are. Browns and Giants have already scheduled top 30s with Sanders. It's good news for the Titans, as you said, whether they've already met with him at the East-West Shrine. So that's another thing to drink to. They're ahead of the curve a little bit, whereas, Browns, Giants getting ready to bring him in for a top 30 sometime soon. So it's definitely good for the Titans.
Exactly. All right. That is a good segue into these quarterbacks. I think let's get Turron Davenport, ESPN reporter, covers the Titans in Nashville. Turron, how's it going? Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, what's going on, fellas? I appreciate you having on. I promise you I'm not being held hostage or anything. I know it looks like that type of situation, but I got my guy Parker Kelly, my producer, and we just got done doing an episode of Talking with TD. So I just turned it around a little bit, went against the wall, and here we are.
Yeah, it looks like a voice booth or a vocal booth or something. I've seen a few of those in my day. Yeah. TD, we want to ask you about the quarterback class here. There's been a lot of talk just about the overall level of this class compared to previous classes, especially last year's historic class, and that looking ahead to 2026, that 2025 has been deemed a weaker class. After studying the tape and looking at the top guys, do you agree with that assessment that this is not a great quarterback class or not a great draft to need a quarterback in?
Well, I mean, I can see where people are saying that because let's be honest, there's two guys. After those two, you're not really looking at anybody else as a first-round pick. But I think if you look at this draft and you look at the depth of it, there's guys that you could get that probably won't start immediately, but they're experienced players and they could surprise you. I'm not saying the same level of Brock Purdy, but you look at, a Will Howard. You look at a Kyle McCord. I saw McCord out there at the Shrine. And I promise you, he looked better than any quarterback at the Senior Bowl. I remember watching Jaxson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Riley Leonard, and I went over to one-on-ones. Naturally, you're going to go to the receiver one-on-one. So I'm watching that, and I'm filming it. 13 straight incompletions. Let me get out of here. I'm going to go watch the O-line, D-line. You know what I mean? But I remember Kyle McCord, he and Aronde Gadsden Jr., they were connecting. And I remember Gadsden in one of the team periods, he ran a corner route, and McCord placed it so perfectly right over his shoulder. He caught it, tapped the toes, went out of bounds. It was a nice gain. And those are the types of things that I look at. I understand that, it's not a year like where you're going to have, a Drake May, a Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix. I don't think there'll be more than 2 drafted in the first round, but I think those 2 are actually pretty good players.
Yeah, that brings us to our next question, Turron. Let's focus on the 2, because if the Titans are choosing one, there's a good chance it's going to be one of those top 2 guys. In your opinion, what are the biggest similarities and differences you've noticed between Cam and Shedeur? And are you maybe leaning one or the other for QB1 right now?
Yeah, the similarities to me are just the swagger, the unwaverable approach, where I don't care what the situation is, these guys are not going to be rattled, right? And to me, it kind of ends there. But when you look at these 2, like I look at Shedeur, so I look at these 2 and I look at it this way. It's like, okay, are you the Houston Texans drafting C.J. Stroud and getting immediate contribution? Or are you the Green Bay Packers drafting Jordan Love and kind of incubating him for, I don't think it would be as long of a period, because chances are you're not going to have an Aaron Rodgers in front of him, but incubate him for a year or 2 and then getting the Jordan Love that you have now. I think those are the differences. When you look at Shedeur Sanders, and if you want to talk about this from a Titans perspective, I looked Brian Callahan right in the face and I said, Brian, tell me, what are the 3 pillars of quarterbacking? Processing, decision-making, and accuracy. And I said, wow, that sounds a lot like Shedeur Sanders. So when you look at the match, I think the match is there. And I know everybody took the quote, because I asked him about the arm strength, and everybody took the quote and ran with it. He wasn't comparing, hey, Shedeur is going to be Joe Burrow, but he was comparing attributes and talking about the anticipation, knowing where you're going to go with the football and when you got to go with it, making up for the arm strength. So, I mean, I'll be honest, like I'm going to say Shedeur, out of the 2. As far as me, the direction I would be leaning from a Titans perspective, I mean, I can't veer away from what I told him in person. I walked up on him in the food court and introduced myself. And when I said Titans, he was like, oh, yeah, well, who would you pick? And I'm like, you. You know what I mean? And he was like, oh, you're just saying that because you're here. I said, no, check the internet. Like, I've been talking about this for a while. So that's the direction. But that being said, you're allowed to like 2 prospects and be high on 2. I love what Cam Ward does. That Virginia Tech game, the early fumble, and then he had the interception late, and he still led them back. And the way that he was able – now, there were things that, you don't like, but you look at just that the fourth down when Restrepo –
where he flipped it.
He still managed to complete it. And this was after 3rd and 1, where he completely missed the receiver on that side. Like, a lot of quarterbacks would be, oh, my God. But this goes to the unwaverableness that he has. All right, we're going to tuck that away. I'm going to hit my man. And even if it's not an ideal situation, that's what you get with Cam Ward. He's, I think, I put both of these guys right up there. And I think an organization won't go wrong drafting either one.
Yeah, I'm on record saying I like Cam Ward more, but I do think Shedeur Sanders, I think Shedeur Sanders has a good chance to be a very good NFL quarterback. I think Cam Ward has maybe a higher bust potential because of some of the dumb turnovers that you see. And I do think, though, that some of his playmaking, if that translates to the NFL, could vault his ceiling much higher than I think what Sanders is. I have a follow-up question there, because you were talking about how you think Sanders fits what Callahan's vision for a quarterback is, and maybe his scheme specifically. Do you think for the Titans, where they are right now, after seeing Callahan for 1 year, would it be a mistake to draft a player that fits Callahan versus drafting a player that maybe has a higher upside, simply because you don't really know if Brian Callahan, we could be looking at week 8 and the Titans are talking about, we don't want anything more to do with Brian Callahan. So I'm just wondering if you think but if you draft the guy that fits his system, then you have a better chance of Brian Callahan sticking further out. Is that in the consideration for you?
Yeah, that's the big dilemma. I think this year is Callahan's year to prove he belongs. And if it doesn't go right, this is bottom line business, right? And if you're not putting up what is expected, NFL is not for long. So That's really what it boils down to. I think you do have to consider that just because, like, he is your coach now. So you want what will be best for that coach because what's best for that coach is going to be best for your organization. Because at the end of the day, like, you don't want to hit the reset button and have to hire a new coach. Even though we know this organization, 3 consecutive years, GM, head coach, GM. What's going to happen year 4? Can in year 4 you establish some type of continuity? So, and speaking of continuity, right? Will Levis, this is going to be the first time he's in the same offense twice in a year. I'm not saying, he's going to earn the job or anything like that, but I think that's something to consider, right? You look at guys who have been, look at how many systems Cam Ward has been in. Look at how many OCs Shedeur Sanders has had. These guys are have adapted to, hey, I got to learn on the fly and get this thing going.
TD, earlier you talked about seeing Kyle McCord and him being the best quarterback you saw out of the 2 collegiate all-star games. One that I want to talk about is Jaxson Dart. You saw him down there in Mobile. Yeah, I like the facial expression because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see it. Like, I'm just going to go on record and say I don't necessarily see it. There seems to be some buzz. It might be misguided or misfounded. We don't even know if it's tangible or real. It's lion season, as we like to call it. I don't see it. What did you see down there?
Yeah, every year, and it happened with J.J. McCarthy last year, right? It's like, and I've said this before, it's like the movie Lion King. Remember when, Mufasa was gone and it was time to anoint Simba and they held him up like this? That's what's happening with Jaxson Dart right now. And I'm not here to trash him at all because he does show, like, he's made some throws, especially like on the move. Like, he's made some throws. You watched the bowl game. Like, that was impressive. And that throw he had, the deep one, everybody's like, first round. I think he didn't have to do much. You know what I mean, to be put in that status. I don't know about first round. I do think he is overhyped some. That's really like the best way I could put it.
Yeah, no doubt about it, TD. Look, this has been outstanding. We've appreciated your time, man. In closing, we're going to put you on the spot a little bit. You know what I mean? There's no escaping this without it. So if you were Borgonzi GM, number 1 pick, man, trade down's not an option. And I guess you're out. You could take one of the non-quarterbacks. We won't force you to take a quarterback, but trade down's not an option. What are you doing at number 1 overall?
Well, what did I do in free agency? That's the
fair. I mean, but so would you go get a quarterback in free agency? Because if you're doing that, then you don't necessarily believe in one of those guys at number 1. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm drafting Shedeur. Like,
wow,
you got you got the number 1 pick. You don't get opportunities to do that often. At least you hope you don't. You took out the trade down option. That would be the ideal one. And we're going to work on the assumption that you're not signing Aaron Rodgers, Darnold, whatever. I'm getting my quarterback. And the thing is, he's been in part. I love going to Colorado. Like, it is such an undervalued aspect playing for Colorado. Going there when he did. Because remember, this team didn't win anything.
They were terrible. Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that they won the division, the conference or anything, because we know they didn't. And obviously, everybody's prayers were answered, when BYU beat them. But they became competitive. They went to a bowl game.
They've gotten so much better.
He's been a part of a rebuild before. But then not only with that rebuild, and I hate to have this sound like, an elevator pitch for Shedeur. He's just, I really like him as a prospect. You know what I mean? But you look at Pat Shermer's offense. And I asked him at the Shrine, I said, how much did playing for Pat Shermer help you? And he said it in the meetings that he went through. The terminology and concepts were easier for me because I've already been in an NFL type of scheme. Pat Shermer, we know, was the OC for multiple years. So, yeah, I would take Shedeur and, I would just go through the growing pains with him. I think that he could keep you above water, and he's going to fill the seats. and you could build around him. That's what I would do.
I talked to a scout the other day that said two things that really interested me. He said, number one, Pat Shurmur was the OC there. You don't realize how much respect Coach Shurmur still has in the NFL and what we think of his offense and what he teaches those guys. And number two, you talked about the program and talk about his father and stuff. People always use it as a negative, but people say that's not an easy situation for the kid either. How about his ability to thrive in what some people would call dysfunction, right? And not only that, but a program, I think they won one game, right, before Coach Prime got there. So his ability to thrive in dysfunction, how many of those guys are getting drafted on that offense? Not a whole lot of them. And outside of Travis, of course, and the ones that are probably late day 3 picks. You know, you got the receiver down there at Shrine. He's interesting, but he's small. He's going to be day 3 most likely. Like his ability to thrive in that Shurmur offense. And the scout said to me, he's going to translate quicker than Cam is because of the traits and also because of the offense and the environment that he was in. I thought that was an interesting point.
Very interesting. And a little receiver is Jonte Wester. I really like him.
Yeah,
man.
He's good.
Yeah. And you can't forget Jimmy Horn Jr. and Vanderbilt, former Vanderbilt, Will Shepherd. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Not to mention the offensive line. So look, man, like he's been in tough situations and he thrived. We're also talking about the most accurate quarterback in the history of NCAA. I'm just saying, you know.
And it's not like they didn't ask him to make any throws. It's not one of those cookie cutter. Yeah, that's a real stat, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And his ability to sort of attack downfield and layer those passes under pressure, getting hit as he throws, as he releases the ball, and still delivering accurately. There's a lot to like about Sanders' game, and I'm saying this for our audience who knows how much I've talked about Cam Ward specifically, but I do like Sanders too. I think, tell me what you think of this, TD, and then we'll let you go here. I think it's a little bit harder to evaluate Sanders' tape because a lot of what he does is on time and in the flow of the offense, and you're not like the Cam Ward highlights are superhuman plays. It's easy to see what he's doing. He's making a pass rusher miss. He's rolling out. He's throwing to the back of the end zone, an incredible play. And it's like, oh, I can see that is better than a lot of what other quarterbacks can do. Whereas with Sanders, it's like he plays on time. He delivers extremely accurate balls. It doesn't always look sensational, but it's high-level quarterback play, and I just think it's a little harder to evaluate that kind of play as a, not expert at the game.
Yeah, but it depends on what you want, right? Like, you want a quarterback that's not going to go broke making a profit. And that's not to say he's flawless, because we know he holds on to the ball too long. I told him personally, you got to stop scrambling backwards like this is Tecmo Bowl. And I know Tecmo Bowl is before your time, but you got to stop doing that, So there are things that he has to work on. But to your point, staying on schedule for the most part, and the way he plays the game like an NFL quarterback. So for me, I look at that, and it doesn't make it hard for me. Like, it's like, okay, this is what you want, And then also the toughness, right? Ooh. There's a few games, you look at, there's multiple games he's had that I like. But I love the Nebraska game because he was getting his brain knocked around, but he still kept coming back and coming back and coming back. That impressed me.
It's funny, Graver. I know we were I was going to say that. I was saying, and so from a toughness perspective, probably one of the toughest quarterbacks I've watched over these last couple of years. I mean, look, some of it he brings on himself, like TD said, with holding on to the ball and whatnot, but the ability and the willingness to take those hits, just get back up, it's definitely really impressive. And to close out what TD said about the high-level, quarterback play, it's exactly what Brian Callahan wishes he had this past season. The accuracy, the timing, the anticipation, all that stuff is what Will Levis wasn't this past year, and it's what Shedeur Sanders is.
Pretty much. You said it right there.
TD, thank you so much for your time, for providing a pro Shedeur Sanders take on this podcast. We haven't really had much of that this offseason, so really appreciate you. Hope to see you around soon.
Yeah, and let me be clear. A pro Shedeur Sanders isn't a con Cam Ward.
Right.
If I were a Titans fan and this team drafted Cam Ward, I'm still clapping. Because it's just, it goes to, do you want a Benz or a Beamer? Like, I think both of them would be good.
I agree. All right, TD, take it easy. Thanks again to Turron Davenport there for joining us, giving us his thoughts on this quarterback class. Interesting stuff to think about. You know, it's good to get these different perspectives on the show, so it's not just you and me repeating ourselves for months until the draft rolls around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Turron's a pro, and that was really good insight into three quarterbacks we wanted to talk about today. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, who's someone, like you said, we haven't talked about much, and TD's a big fan of his game, and also Jaxson Dart, who might be a bit of a wild card in this quarterback class. So really good stuff from TD. Glad he was able to come on with us today.
Same here. All right. Thank you to everyone for watching. That will do it for today's episode. Make sure you are subscribed to the Music City Audible podcast. Give this video a thumbs up, like, and drop a comment below. What'd you think of what TD said? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a favorite quarterback in this class? If the Titans did go that route, let us know in the comments. Justin and I will be back with another episode later this week. And Justin, it's going to be my first episode from my new home in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. As you can see, my background's getting pretty bare. We've been packing up all week. As soon as we're done recording this episode, I'm taking my whole desk down, packing all this shit up. So it's going to be a new adventure for us.
You better have put Titans of the South in a safe place. I see that's no longer up there.
Oh, yeah. It's not here because it's been wrapped in pristine bubble wrap and packed into a box, very snug and secure to keep it safe for the journey. And I don't know what my background's going to look like next time we record a podcast, but it's going to be very different. It's going to be a new place, and I'm excited for the transition here. But any final thoughts, Justin, before we sign off today?
No, you guys stay safe out there and tighten up. And good luck to Graver on the move. As you said, he's getting ready to make the big move. So next time you see him, it's going to look a little different.
That's right. So as you said, stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.